drops back at the rail. Then it is En Voutante. The mile went in 1:36.4, and they're in the stretch, and it is Swiss Skydiver, and she's opened up on the field here. Swiss Skydiver in front by a half dozen lengths. Then Harvey's Little Girl, Bonnie South, and En Voutante. And Swiss Skydiver is sailing home here in the 140th running of the Alabama. Bonnie South came on for second.
And welcome back once again to Racing Rundown. Today we've got the long-awaited preview of the Kentucky Oaks, one of the two big feature races at Churchill Downs, a big feature race of Friday. 9 horses take the post, not the usual 14 that we're usually used to with the Kentucky Oaks, but it's still a really strong group of 9 horses. And as usual, we're going to go through all of them and talk about them in perspective to this race. And we're going to start with the number 1, the not favored on the morning line, but I think probably the most likely horse and the best horse at this particular distance to win the race. And I stipulate that at this distance. We'll get to that in a few minutes when we talk about Gamine. But talking about Swiss Skydiver, who's the horse I'm referencing here, talk about a horse that has definitely benefited from the pandemic. If the Kentucky Oaks had been run on schedule, she probably would have made the field because she did win the Gulfstream Park Oaks. But I think, the pandemic has definitely allowed Swiss Skydiver to mature as a racehorse. And we've just seen her be so good since it clicked for her in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Two graded stakes wins after that in the Fantasy and the Santa Anita Oaks. A really good second behind Art Collector, who's going to be one of the favorites for the Kentucky Derby in the Bluegrass. And then last start, she got her first Grade 1 win, very impressively going 1.25 miles in the Alabama. And this is a point that I haven't really seen a lot of people make, but something that I thought of immediately after the Alabama is, and I'm not going to speak for all the history of the Kentucky Oaks because I'm definitely going to miss something that's happened obscure before a lot of the known times with this race. But with Swiss Skydiver, she's coming into this race and she's going to be cutting back. I don't know the last time a filly has been going into this race and cutting back, but I think that that's definitely going to be something that plays to her advantage. 1.25 miles in the Alabama last time. She cuts back a furlong, 1 1/8. She's already gone that distance in the Bluegrass and finishing second to Art Collector. And that was a really good effort for her there. And she's just primed to have a really big effort. I want to, obviously mention that I do have a personal rooting interest. Swiss Skydiver trained by a personal friend, Kenny McPeak. So really happy for him that he finally got an opportunity like this on the Kentucky Oaks. And Swiss Skydiver is one horse that absolutely is a must consider in this Kentucky Oaks.
Yeah, and especially if she's not going to be favored, Gamine morning line favorite. I really don't know if she's going to go off favored Gamine because I feel like there's a lot of people who are already off of her and a lot more people that are going to be on Swiss Skydiver here. But either way, she's going to be very low priced no matter if she's the favorite or the second choice. And I mean, there's really nothing much else to say. She's just very talented. She's done it all right. I think the only thing that she did not benefit from with this time was the fact I feel like there's a lot of people who would have rather had whatever long shot price they would have gotten on her in a May Kentucky Oaks compared to now when she's going to be really short priced. But like I said, just extremely talented. The one post is not a big concern to me. She's very tactical. She can either be on the lead or just right off of it. And with, the natural speed of Gamine, I highly doubt Swiss Skydiver is going to want to go with her early on, probably sit second or third. And she's going to be able to work out a good trip despite the rail draw. And we know she likes Churchill. She's already has a win over it. So just a very talented filly. Certainly, like Jack said, one to consider. And I have a very hard time seeing many horses beating her here.
And we're going to get to the second horse, Tempers Rising, who has not won a race on the Kentucky Oaks Trail, doesn't have a race this year, only 1 win in 10 starts. 5 seconds and 2/3, though, including 2 seconds and a third this year. One of those seconds coming in the Fairgrounds Oaks, where she finished second to Bonnie South, and in the process she beat Finite and Antoinette, both horses that were stakes winners. Finite, really impressive winner of the Rachel Alexandra, and Antoinette has become a graded stakes winner on the grass. So definitely quality effort for her there is coming into this race off of a second in an allowance at Ellis Park on the 31st of June, where she was beaten a length by Jeweled Princess. She does have one poor effort in between the second in the Fairgrounds Oaks and that allowance at Ellis. It was 7th, where she was beaten by Envotant, who ran a good third place effort in the Ashland, but she was well beaten in that race. So that kind of negates the positivity there. Ultimately, for me, I like other horses in here that I think are going to have more value and I think can run better than her. But she does have the good efforts in the past. And overall, even though she only has one win, she does have the 8 times in the money, including the 5 seconds and the 2/3. So if you like the consistency and you're willing to swallow the 7th place finish that she had in that allowance at Churchill, then she could be a route to look at.
And if you're really looking to, find a way to get this filly involved, the pace setup's going to be really nice for her, especially if you're expecting a hot pace, which I am, and I imagine most are. She's a closer who always comes running late. The Fairgrounds Oaks is probably the best example of that when she ran that really good second in that good group. And while her last 2 have not been good, I mean, that 7th was a really bizarre effort. I mean, that was just uncharacteristic. And sure, she lost last time out as well in that allowance at Ellis Park, but she was running late, and really what you need for her is a pace meltdown. But that could be very possible in this race. Personally, I don't think I'm going to use her, but if you think you need a closer to finish out the try or something, Tempers Rising is definitely one to consider.
The 3 is probably, at least for me, one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting horse in this Kentucky Oaks. It is Donna Veloce. She's got 2 wins in 4 starts, and the other 2 races were both seconds in Grade 1s behind British Idiom, the juvenile filly champion of last year, and Bast, who unfortunately got injured early into this year, but had she been able to maintain her health, she probably would have been a top contender on this Kentucky Oaks trail. And then her most recent effort, which was the Santa Isabel, very impressive win. But the one thing with her, and the big reason why she's a wild card and why she's 15-1 on the morning line in this race, is because she has not run since then. Simon Callaghan made the decision to train her up to the Oaks after she had missed a lot of time in the middle part of the year. And I can honestly forgive any person who is not really super enthused by that, because a horse coming into the Kentucky Oaks off a 6-month layoff, I don't know when the last time that's ever happened, and if it has happened, then that horse was probably not very highly regarded. Honestly, I think Donna Veloce belongs, just based on talent, belongs in the top 4 in this race with your Gamines, with your Swiss Skydivers, and with your Speeches. But you do have to contend with the fact that she is off a layoff, and also the fact, another reason she may be scared away from her, is she is trained by Simon Callaghan, and as it is well documented, Simon Callaghan horses don't ship very well into races in general. Bellafina was an example of that last year, with her off the board finish in the Kentucky Oaks. But if you like what you saw in the Santa Isabel and you're willing to swallow the very daunting 6-month layoff for her, then she's definitely an obvious use, because she's going to be of some really, really nice value.
Definitely. And, I've been talking about this. I mean, I feel like this filly kind of just got lost in the Swiss Skydiver, even Speech hype, and horses that were still running. And every time someone would mention, debate the best fillies in this crop, I'd always make sure to throw in Donna Veloce, because I still think that she's one of the best. But the layoff is super concerning. The shipping is a little scary, purely because she's only ran at 2 tracks in her career, both in Southern California. And but I have faith in her. I don't think she's going to run poorly. The numbers for Simon Callaghan off the layoff and shipping, they're not overly impressive. It's really hit or miss. Either they run super good or they run well off the board. At the end of the day, I think she is one you can go against. Just the layoff is the biggest concern. But on talent, I mean, I would not be surprised at all to see her jump up and win this race, but I just find it very unlikely based off the fact we haven't seen her in a while, and these other fillies in this race, the top ones, have progressed so much over the last 6 months.
And the next horse we're going to get to is Speech, who, when we talked about her going into the Ashland, the knock on her is that she had been knocking on the door against quality stakes horses and running really good second place finishes, but that's what they were. They were second place finishes, and she hadn't been getting the job done. She'd been running behind Bast. She'd been running behind Swiss Skydiver. She'd been running behind Gamine. And, that was a real question going into the Ashland. She finally broke through there and got her first Grade 1 win here. She's 5-1 on the morning line, And it is also worth mentioning the allowance that she lost to Gamine to. She was moved up in, but that's not the reason I'm going to focus on that. Gamine, who, a lot of people think is one of the best three-year-old fillies on talent in the country, and there are definitely going to be a large group of people who think she can win this race. Going a mile and a 16th in that allowance at Oaklawn, and this is probably going to be lost on people because the disqualification is going to get more attention now. In that race, Speech was closing against Gamine, and we'll talk about this more in a moment with Gamine, but Gamine was kind of wavering in that race, and Speech just ran out of ground. This is a mile and an eighth. Speech is definitely going to love the extra distance. She was second to Swiss Skydiver in the Santa Anita Oaks. I don't think Swiss Skydiver was fully cranked up in that race, but, she definitely did run a very respectable second there. Ran a respectable second behind Venetian Harbor, who did also run a very good second behind Swiss Skydiver earlier this year. So you've got good horses all around when you talk about Speech, and I don't know. I think that she may be a horse that could step up, and if there is a meltdown, and if for some reason, I don't know, I'm not going to say that it's going to happen, but if for some reason Swiss Skydiver does get caught up there and her and Gamine duel each other out, then Speech is probably going to be one of the top, if not the top horse to go with if you're going to factor in a potential pace meltdown.
And one thing I will say about that is that Speech has ran her best races within a length or two of the lead. Really, most of her races have been there, but the closer she's been to the pace, the better. So that does concern me. If there is a pace, if Gamine starts going really fast and Swiss Skydiver goes with her, I wouldn't love to see Speech coming from too far off the lead. I feel like she needs to kind of sit second or third. I imagine that be Gamine, Swiss Skydiver, and Speech there. But Speech, she's proven that fast paces don't deter her. In that race against Gamine, where Gamine set the pace, Speech ran huge, just sitting off of her, and then sitting next out in the Santa Anita Oaks was where she kind of took a little further back, and she just wasn't able to finish the job off. But this is a filly I've always been impressed with. After that allowance race against Gamine at Oaklawn, I said that this was the filly to watch coming out of this race on the Oaks Trail. She's been so consistent, and that Ashland was so good last time out. Now, this is much tougher, and she's already lost two. We've already talked about Swiss Skydiver and Donna Veloce as the top two, and we're going to talk about Gamine as the third of this, top four in this Oaks. And she's lost to all of them. Obviously, she got put up in that race against Gamine due to Gamine's disqualification for medication reasons, but nevertheless finished behind her. But I do agree with Jack. The extra distance is going to be beneficial to her. It's just really a question of if she can step it up. And, while I do think that all the horses that have beat her had better setups and better trips in their races, and that could very well be the case again here, she's a must-use in your exotics underneath. She's always very consistent and runs huge every time behind the best horses this crop has.
And we're going to change that argument going from a filly that's definitely going to love the extra ground to a filly who I think, and a lot of people are definitely going to be of this mindset of a horse that the extra ground is going to diminish, and that is Gamine. What can be said about her talent that hasn't already been said? She's never been beaten in a race. No horses crossed the wire in front of her. Like we mentioned, she did have the disqualification at Oaklawn, but that race at Oaklawn is really, I think, the focal point to how you should look at Gamine. Yes, she's coming into this race and she's got the super shiny 2 Grade 1 wins, the Test and the Acorn. But it is worth mentioning, the Acorn was a 1-turn mile and the Test was a 7-furlong sprint. Both of those races, like I already mentioned, 1 turn. Gamine, pedigree suggests that, Into Mischief has never produced a stakes winner past a mile and an eighth, and pedigree suggests that she's going to want more around the 1 turn, and just the way that she's looked running, it doesn't look like that she's the kind of type that the mile and an eighth isn't necessarily going to be something that she's yearning for. And I mentioned that I was going to get to that allowance at Oaklawn. She had a sizable lead in the stretch, and she just kind of, I don't want to say hit a wall, but she just got tired. And Speech was able to close into her. Speech is a very talented racehorse in her own right, but you can't escape the fact that Gamine got tired in that race. I'll compare it to what Authentic did in the Haskell. You could tell that the distance got to Authentic late in the stretch in the Haskell. That was going a mile and an eighth. You can tell going a mile and a 16th in that allowance at Oaklawn that the distance was getting to her, and that was a mile and a 16th. The Kentucky Oaks is a mile and an eighth. If she was backing up that much going a mile and a 16th, I don't want to see what she's going to do in a race going a mile and an eighth. Her 2 races going into the Oaks, fabulous. The test was fantastic. The Acorn record-setting, that was a special performance. But for me, and it feels weird to do this, but I can't use a horse who, even though she's coming out of 2 spectacular Grade 1 efforts, I can't use a horse that just has sprinter written all over her and doesn't even give me an indication that she wants distance. So, unfortunately, as weird as it is, I can't use Gamine in this Kentucky Oaks.
And my one argument against the distancing, obviously, she was dead tired in that mile and 16th race, and her pedigree suggests that one turns best. But she did go super fast in that race at Oaklawn, setting quick fractions. She had some pressure, but not a ton. But I think it was just her natural speed that carried her. 46 and 2 for the half mile, very quick for that distance. Looking at this race, Gamine is the only horse in this race that's really confirmed speed. There's a lot of horses that, have either been on the lead or they've been, on the lead at times, but really they kind of seem, and their best races have come when they sat just off the pace, just a length or two off. And I feel like Swiss Skydiver, Tyler Gaffalione, and Javier Castellano on speech, and even She Dares the Devil and Florent Drew are not going to want to try to engage in a speed duel with these fillies against Gamine, who is just a natural speedball. So that is my one concern, that these riders are going. We've seen it a couple times this summer where riders have been too scared to go with the speed early on. Even last time out in the test, Joel Rosario did not want Venetian Harbor trying to throw it down with Gamine early on, and that pretty much took her out of the race. I could see it happening here. I would not be surprised. Obviously, we'll know on Friday what the case is, but that is my one concern, that they're going to let her have an easy lead here because they're trying not to burn themselves out. I don't think that she's going to finish dead last. I think that she's going to run a very gritty race and probably grind out a solid, spot underneath. But I am genuinely concerned that she's somehow going to sneak away here with a wire-to-wire score.
And moving on to the number 6 horse in the race, this is Bayerness. She's coming out of 2 good third-place efforts in Grade 2 races, the Dogwood going 7 furlongs, and the Indiana Oaks prior to that. But she did have one off-the-board finish this year in the Devona Dale, where she was beaten by 2 horses, Toneless Shape and Spice is Nice. Both of those 2, looked to be really nice horses earlier in the year. Didn't necessarily pan out that way. The one thing I will say about her is, she definitely did come back and run better races. The Dogwood was a really nice victory by 4 Graces in that race. And, she was also beaten by She Dares the Devil in the Indiana Oaks. And, I think She Dares the Devil is a good, solid graded stakes level horse. I don't think that she's, She Dares the Devil, we'll get to her in a minute. I don't think she's like a fabulous, grade 1 level horse, but she's a good regional grade 3 level horse. And, she was third to that. Good third for her, but ultimately, I think that the top horses in this race are just a little bit more outshine her, if you want to put it that way.
Definitely. I guess the one positive for Bayerness is that she's the only filly in this field that has actually beaten Swiss Skydiver last fall and at Churchill Downs. Obviously, there was much different circumstances now. Swiss Skydiver is a much better filly than she was last year. But that was a good effort for this filly, and I think that the 2 turns is going to be good for her. The Indiana Oaks wasn't a horrible race last time out. It was a good third. Realistically, if the pace does end up being pretty quick, she is another candidate to finish off anything underneath. She is a kind of off this pace horse. But at the end, I think she's just overmatched here. There's nothing on paper that suggests that she's going to run an absolutely huge race, other than the fact she has beaten Swiss Skydiver once many starts ago, and they're different horses now.
And the next horse we're going to get to is the number 7, She Dares the Devil, two-time Grade 3 winner. Earlier this year, she took the Honeybee. Last start out, she took the Indiana Oaks. We already talked about that effort with Bayerness. But, she has been running really good races this year. Second in allowance prior to her stakes win in the Honeybee. Third in the Fantasy behind Swiss Skydiver and Venetian Harbor. Then she went to Churchill, won an allowance there. So we already know that she can run well over the surface. She broke her maiden there last year. And that allowance win at Churchill was over some solid stakes horses. Alta's Award is a horse who has run some good efforts in the past. And Lazy Daisy was a stakes winner at 2. Fire Coral was also a horse who was in the Alabama. So, She Dares the Devil does have some good efforts in her. It's just the question that you have to ask her is she of the level of winning a race like this? And I don't think that she's demonstrated that she's of the level of being able to beat horses like Swiss Skydiver and Speech. She was well beaten in the Fantasy, even though she was third in that race. So that's the one thing that I would say that I don't necessarily like that much about She Dares the Devil. But if you're looking for, a horse that is definitely going to have some value and you don't want to play one of the top 3 or Donna Veloce for any reason, then she could be one that, it is an outsider that you could look at.
Yeah, I think she's very talented coming in this race. She's had a very good year. And the Fantasy, you could easily draw a line through. She ran into so much trouble on the first turn, got bumped around a ton, had nowhere to go on the far turn, was stuck in behind horses on the rail, and still finished a really strong third. That was a very nice race, and now she's come back and won back-to-back races very impressively. Good, very strong times that she's been posting. And like I said, the Fantasy, the fact she was able to run third there, and I know she was beaten 13 lengths, but in that big of a field, she still beat, a bunch of really talented horses in that third-place finish, and she's been impressive in every other sense. This is underneath, if anything, because she's been just so consistent, even when she's had unideal setups, bad trips, and her only losses this year come to Bonnie South, who very easily could have been a contender in this race had they chosen to run her, and then Swiss Skydiver, who is the class of this field, as well as Venetian Harbor, who is a very good sprinting filly as well. So a very, very talented horse. I imagine you're going to get a good price because of all the top money being put on Gamine and Swiss Skydiver and Speech. So if you're looking for value, She Dares the Devil is your value.
And the next horse we're going to get to is the number 8, Hopeful Growth, the horse who's scratched out of the Charlestown Oaks for the purpose of running in this race. She's coming into the Kentucky Oaks off of a win in the Monmouth Oaks, and she does also have 2 good runs this year. Prior to that, a second in an allowance in her first start this year. She won an allowance at Tampa. She does have an off-the-board finish in the Delaware Oaks, but she did rebound and is coming into the Kentucky Oaks off of a win, which is definitely important. Isn't obviously the be-all and the end-all, but I think it definitely does speak to a horse that they're coming into a race off of a win. And it is also worth mentioning that they did scratch her out of the Charlestown Oaks for the purpose of running here, so they definitely do think that she does belong. So that is another good thing that you can say about her.
Yeah, and it would be one thing. These connections are not high level, but the owner, Vinny Viola, he's well known in the racing industry. Horses like, Always Dreaming is the first one that comes to mind, but he's had a lot of good horses. So the fact that he, as an owner, wanted this filly in the race does give me some confidence she's trending in the right direction. And on all other fronts, she is as well. She is steadily improved with each and every race. I'm not a big speed figures user, but she has been improving based off those numbers. And that win last out was very impressive. Whatever happened at Delaware 2 starts ago happened. I couldn't really tell you what went wrong there. She was behind some pretty good fillies. All of those, the top 3 in that group, all stakes caliber, stakes winning fillies, but much tougher, much easier than what she's facing here. But she's been nice, and I think that she is improving. And one thing of note is that, like I said, I'm not a big speed figure person, but she's actually not the worst in this group. She is better than quite a few in here. So whether she's one that runs off the pace horse as well, another that could benefit from a quick pace. She's overmatched against a couple of them, but like I said, if the pace melts down, she could be another one that comes running.
And the last horse in the Kentucky Oaks that we're going to be talking about is Dream Marie. And, Eric mentioned that she was running behind some capable stakes level fillies. And this is a filly who her first two starts going back to this year and then her last start last year. Both wins at the Allowance Company. She broke her maiden in a maiden claimer last year at Gulfstream in November. Won 2 straight. Going into the Devona Dale, was beaten by Toneless Shape and Spices Nice, who we already talked about. Have trended down since then. She was 6th in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. She did run a good second in the Hollywood Wildcat, but was 8th in a black type at Gulfstream. But like we already mentioned, 2nd in the Delaware Oaks and 4th in the Monmouth Oaks last time. She's another horse that I definitely say is overmatched, but she does have some good efforts. She does have the 2 off-the-board finishes, including the 6th in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, but her last 2 efforts were not bad. So, if you like of another horse that is probably going to be a very, very big odds, then you can definitely include her in here. I would personally take a pass. I think she's another one of the overmatched horses. But, there are some routes that people might have that I don't necessarily have. So if that's your play, then good for you.
And of the closers, I know with a lot of these fillies that come from off the pace, I've said they could come running late should the pace be really hot. This one will come running late if the pace is hot. That she's proven that she can close strongly in races where the pace wasn't even very, very quick. Last time out in the Monmouth Oaks, she was 4th, beaten 7 lengths, but the pace wasn't there for her, and she still finished pretty strongly. 2 starts ago, Delaware Oaks, pace wasn't strong there either. 2nd, beaten just a half length. Obviously, much easier horses, but at the end of the day, running strong races, finishing late, and I guess my best example I could come up would be the Devona Dale from this February when she was 3rd behind Toneless Shape, Spices Nice, 2 highly regarded fillies, even though they've struggled as of late. And she was 3rd, beaten 4 lengths. With the pace was pretty quick that day. So I think if it were to be the case or if you were of the mindset that Swiss Skydiver, Gamine, Speech are all really going to go at each other early on and absolutely throw up wild fractions, I think that Dream Marie is one you should probably consider if you are looking for a closer to finish some trifectas, superfectas out, because in that sense she makes sense. I don't think she's a win contender. She's well overmatched, but she is one where if she gets the right setup, for sure will be closing very well.
So now we are going to be moving on to our picks for this race. It is very hard to avoid a lot of the chalkiness in this race, but I think we are both trying to get a little bit of value in here. But let's start out with who my top 4 for this race is. I'm going to go with Swiss Skydiver on top. I just can't trust Gamine going a mile and an eighth. When I am in the position where I have to say if Gamine has to run, has to get really lucky in order to win this race, then I can't count on a horse like Gamine getting really lucky. So I'm going to leave her out of my top 3. I'm going to go Swiss Skydiver on top. I'm going to go She Dares the Devil second. I do think that, her past 2 efforts have been good. And I'm just looking to go outside of the horses like Speech and Donna Veloce, even though I will put Donna Veloce 3rd because I do think Donna Veloce may be more talented than Speech, and I am taking a bit of a risk because I am taking Donna Veloce off the layoff, but I do think Donna Veloce is maybe the 2nd best 3-year-old filly at distance, just purely based on talent. And I will, for the respect, throw Gamine in for 4th, just because I don't think she's going to wilt. I think that she will stick around, but I don't think that she's going to be able to hang on and win.
And for me, I'm also going Swiss Skydiver on top. If you've listened to the previews we've done for her other races, if you've listened to the podcast, I've really been cautious about her. But after that Alabama, I'm all in on her. I think that she's just supremely talented. She's going to be able to work out a good trip. The only thing that would concern me would be a poor break. But even that, she's just been so talented this year. I just believe she has every chance in the world to overcome it. And she's just been so good. For second, I will go Speech. I think that she's been knocking on the door, and I feel like this is another opportunity for her. I think at a mile and an eighth, she's better than Gamine. Donna Veloce, I don't trust off the layoff. So that takes out the 2 that have gotten the better of her in this race this year. And Swiss Skydiver's left. Well, Swiss Skydiver was obviously much the best Santa Anita Oaks stand. I don't think it's different this day. So I think Speech is a good use underneath, especially with the solid price you'll probably get on her. And then for 3rd, I will go She Dares the Devil as well. I think that she's been super good. I do like that she's 2 for 2 at Churchill. And I think that she has all the chances in the world, especially if she sits the right trip to pick up some of the minor pieces. And then for 4th, just going to throw one big long shot out there because I feel like we've been so chalky in our talk. We're both picking one of the likely favorites, and both of our horses underneath are also going to be short price. But Dream Marie, like I said, if the pace melts down, she's going to be coming late. If you are of the belief that this is going to, that Gamine and a couple others are going to try and break, the speed sound barrier, they go for Dream Marie to finish off your tries in Superfectas at a big price.
So that is it for this Kentucky Oaks preview. Like I mentioned, we will be back later on this week talking more about the Kentucky Derby and having previews for some of the various graded stakes races. Jay Privman will also be joining us to talk about the Kentucky Derby on Wednesday, so we're looking forward to that. Thank you for stopping by. If you haven't subscribed already, consider subscribing, and if you haven't checked out any of our individual Derby profiles for all the horses for the Kentucky Derby, also check those out. We will see you next time.
Danvers and Perfect Alibi, they come off the turn and enter the stretch. Johnny Velasquez now asking a bit more from Gamine, and she is responding with 1/8 of a mile to the finish. Gamine has opened up on Venetian Harbor. She's in front by 4, now by 5. She won the Longines Acorn at Belmont, and she wins the Longines Test here at Saratoga. And look at the final time.